Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. This is episode number 101. That's what happens after 100. I am recording live on June 25th. Hopefully we're not going to be too out of it because we are recording like Sunday afternoon. Usually I record at night. I was on a show, Utah Outcast, like 11 hours ago. So yeah, it's non-stop craziness here. So thank you to Bobby and Ashley for making a fine return to the program last week. No Religion Required is past the 160 episode mark, and they are still entertaining people with their unique Southern charm on a weekly basis. Wednesday night at 8 Eastern Time. Do check it out. And I need one more promo before starting. In my preamble last week, I mentioned my sports ball show Going for Two, also Wednesday night at 8. But we started first. We were there before No Religion. Anyway, but I forgot to mention my excellent co-host Charone, who puts up with my interruptions as long as I occasionally buy her dragon's milk. You're a good friend, and I tip my too early for a Sunday glass to you. And yes, of course it's not too early.
We're drinking. No, it's past noon for us. We're Eastern time. And besides, it's Sunday, so brunch rules apply.
There you go. Well, Charone
I'm a lawyer.
Finally, I know you're excited. You're raring to go. So Charone Frankel is the host of Habeas Humor, or Habeas Humor, if you do the British pronunciation. This New Jersey-based attorney also is a comedian by night. Her show to date has covered issues from sexy lawyers to strip clubs to, yes, there's some depressing stuff in there, like the Attorney General of Kansas making up stories about illegal voting. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Did you call me the co-host? That is awesome.
Did I post co-host? I hope not.
No, but you said co-host.
That's my brain. There we go.
Well, now it's binding. You said it. It's my show now.
Sure show. Well, yeah, every guest. Well, actually, every guest is the star. See, it's kind of like I'm the awkward guy in high school, but somehow I bring on like the captain of the football team, and then the other people go, "Ooh, the captain of the football team, how cool!" Well, this awkward guy, I don't need you anymore. So people listen to my show to find out other shows that are cool, and hopefully they'll remember the person who introduced them. But boy, I can't start the show without a couple of out of context quotes.
Okay.
A couple. I probably should add more, but if we have to share, we're like, fuck that. I was apparently my own grandparents when it comes to podcasts. So, yeah, I guess the technology part was a little difficult.
Those are things I have said. Those are my quotations.
Yes, they are. Those are yours. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my grandparents were, they resisted the internet age until their dying breaths. They refused to use email. My aunt had gotten them a little email machine. Apparently it's a thing that it's just like a little mini computer that you could just use for email, and they wouldn't use it. So we could never talk to them via any sort of internet. And they didn't like to talk on the phone either. They were the only grandparents in the world who didn't want their grandkids to call them. It was kind of crushing to me during my formative years.
We're starting into some personal issues already. That's good.
I'm sorry.
It's good to hit on that. Well,
I need to not do that because everyone will know how fucked up I am mentally.
It all comes out eventually. I think that the whole law degree thing will pretty much give everybody the first, inclination. But we can't get there just quite yet. Now, what's the backstory? Like, where are you from? I believe you're from California, but now you're like East Coast. What's the East Coast, West Coast deal?
Yes, I was born and raised I knew this would be a problem. I'm looking down at the little window that has me so I can see me, but the camera is up here.
Yeah, well,
and it doesn't appear to be any way. I've never used Google Hangout before. There doesn't appear to be any way to move that window. The last time I tried, I disconnected myself from the call. So I'm just going to have to look up. Just going to have to be like a news anchor and just look at it without seeing myself.
The teleprompter is down. You have to just improvise.
Scary.
I know you don't really do that, but maybe you could try for this show.
I do, but I usually don't do it knowing that there's an image of me that I'm not allowed to look at because it'll show my eyes going down. All right, the question was where? This is what in a deposition or in a court, they would object. They'd be like, the witness is not responding to the question. Where did I grow up? So I grew up in Oakland, California. I was born there. I lived there until I was a teenager, and then I moved to other places in the Bay Area. And I went to law school at UC Davis, which is very close to Sacramento. And then after law school, I had no better place to go than New Jersey. It was just kind of turned out that way.
No better place, huh?
New Jersey was preferable to Sacramento. Sorry, Thomas.
That's right. He's in that area. Just because I don't know. Some people I associate with parts of the country. I always got confused by Scathing Atheists because they did not sound like people who lived in Valdosta, Georgia. So I'm kind of glad they're back in the Northeast because it's
that was so interesting because I only discovered that show like less than a year ago, and I started listening from the beginning, and I knew like I had heard the latest. Like I would listen to the latest as they come out. So they would say like from New York, and Secret Lair, Pennsylvania. But then I would go back to the beginning and it was this whole saga. And I didn't want the spoilers. I was like, oh, I can't wait to find out. Now they're in Georgia. What happened? And then they went back. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to find out. It was like a Game of Thrones. Don't spoil it for me. So I just listened to the whole saga as it went. You know, Eli joined the show and they moved to Georgia and then they moved back and it's crazy.
It's impressive to listen to the whole thing because when I had, actually, Eli was just joining, so I had Noah and Heath on, and they were in Georgia at the time. And yeah, I think that was about the time they were. And I listened to the first episode. You know, sometimes you listen to a first episode of podcast, like, man, the quality's not good, and you haven't figured it out yet. It was just a half hour instead of an hour, and it was kind of him just talking at the beginning, but. Yeah, to binge. It's been a while since I've done. I think I did that with like Thinking Atheist when I first was getting into podcasts. But it's hard to do when you're like Cognitive Dissonance is on like episode 360 or something. Yeah, come on. I get the point. I hope I get the point. But we want to talk about your own podcasting journey.
I always do that. I start talking about other people's shows because I find it so much more interesting.
What is it? They all owe you something.
They do. I may ask for a favor. I live in Jersey, so I may ask for a favor.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, someday there'll be a favor. It may never come, but it'll probably involve burying something.
An offer you can't refuse.
So what made you think, you know what, I want to jump into this whole podcasting game and do it?
My first idea to have a podcast came when I was listening. I think I listened to a total of 2 podcasts. Well, actually 3, but the third one only had a few episodes and then it kind of stopped. So I listened to Greg Proops and I never thought I could do what he does. And then I started listening to Dan Savage and I really was into that show and I like binged all the episodes. And I was like, oh, he gets to just talk about his opinions on things and it sounds really interesting to people and people like it. I want to do that. So I had thought about setting up a podcast kind of based on his format, although I don't have people writing me for advice, but I at least could do the ranting and raving part. But I never did get that set up. I never did come up with anything really good for an idea or anything. And then I started listening to more podcasts like The Scathing Atheist and Cognitive Dissonance. Like it was Scathing Atheist first, and then Cognitive Dissonance, and then I think Opening Arguments. And once I heard Opening Arguments and I heard these 2 buffoons talking about the law, I'm like, I can fucking do that. So, so that's how I got my own show. I was like, no, I'm doing it. And I thought I was going to follow the way that the Scathing Atheists evolved, which was they started with 1 half hour every 2 weeks. I was like, that sounds manageable. But I was not able to. I was making myself come out. Once I got over a little bump in the first month or so, I was making myself do them every week. Like I just couldn't stop myself. And it's like we were talking about before we started, it's driving me crazy because it's just really hard because I already have 2 jobs. So
there's a lot of juggling going on. So what would you say your elevator speech is for your show?
Oh my God. You sound like Andrew. He's always trying to help me promote the show, get listeners. It combines this is what I said to on another show. It combines my profession, which is law, with my hobby, which is comedy. So it's I guess a wannabe daily show or something, but I'm nowhere near as good as the writers on that show. Someday I hope to maybe kind of approach that, but I'm practicing. Writing is hard. I did some sketch writing classes in New York, and it's again that I never really practiced because I didn't have the time, and now this is making me practice it. So at least I'm hopefully getting better at comedy writing, which I've always wanted to do, but just was too busy for.
Well, it's a good era to do something like that because it is mainly a time thing to do a podcast, and then you can just do whatever you want, and then it's like you're practicing for this maybe potential job down the road. So what's the kind of the format of the show?
I do. I don't have a co-host. I was originally supposed to, and it didn't quite work out. So I do it solo, which makes it so hard because I got to do everything by myself. I got to do the writing, the recording, the editing, getting guests, just everything. Research. I was hoping to not have to do too much research, and it turns out if you want anyone to listen to you, you can't just talk about your socks or whatever. Some people could, but I'm, again, not funny enough. So I actually have to have substance in my show. So I end up researching the news and researching the law. And I tend to focus on one topic per show because I can't really write for more than that. So like last week we did the presidential commission on election, whatever, the stupid bullshit that Trump has come up where he's got Chris Kovacs, Secretary of State of Kansas, and Mike Pence investigating voter fraud and not finding any, despite going on Fox News or whatever and saying there's evidence, or despite doing press conferences that they're like, oh, there's evidence of voter fraud. And, Trump would have had the popular vote, but for 3 million people who voted illegally. And they claim there's evidence of it, but there isn't. So.
And why is there the automatic assumption that like everybody who voted illegally must have voted for Hillary? That's like, you're gonna find it on both sides. I would just assume.
Yeah, it's not like Republicans have a reputation for cheating.
No, they like everybody to vote, and they always tell the truth on their heads. Oh, we just got through this in Georgia. I don't know what I'm gonna do with I don't know what kind of YouTube ads are gonna come my way because it was all political for about the last forever. We're free, or at least we're free, except we brought on someone who sucks, but that's okay. That's the way it goes. But that's me. That's not you. So, okay, this is the drinking question, very important question. So, do you drink while recording, and is it recommended to drink while listening to your show if you're not operating a motor vehicle?
I do not drink while recording. I'm doing your show drinking.
This does not compute.
But I don't do my show drinking. I tend to do my show at night, and I try to not distract myself with anything because it takes long enough as it is, and drinking tends to make me tired, which is the last thing I need because I'm somebody who tends to fall asleep pretty early, or at least lose the energy to do anything productive early. So I don't think drinking would help me when I'm doing my show. If people want to drink while listening to my show, doesn't drinking make everything kind of sound better? Like if you go watch a shitty band, but you're drunk, you're like, this band is the shit.
I think that's why I request, people, 2 drink minimum, but that's a different show. Yeah. But I did, when I actually did my kind of opening monologue, which I don't usually do for last week, I'm like, all right, I have a beer, but I'm going to put it down while I do this talk because I want to talk I don't make a lot of sense when I'm totally sober anyway. So yeah, that's good. So far in your show, you've had an episode about strippers and you had one on sexy lawyers. So where does all this, where do all these ideas come from?
I tend to just look up what's going on in the news. When I did the stripper show, I had, I Google the legal news and I look at, did any interesting lawsuits get filed? Did any famous lawyers get caught with their dick in their hand? Did, anything like that? And so I found that lawsuit against the strip clubs in Colorado. There's a couple of them where strippers are suing the clubs that they work for because the clubs that they work for have been taking advantage of them financially and not following tax laws and that kind of stuff and not following wage and hour laws. So I was like, well, that sounds like an interesting story. And I always think try to think of subjects that the audience will be interested in because I don't want the show to be boring. And what was the other one? Oh, the sexy lures. That one was, a lot of the time the topic of the show comes from the guests, because when I have guests on the show, I always ask them, like, is there anything you want to come on and talk about? Or is there anything you want to come on and ask me about? And that guest, Sean Carter, is a lawyer who teaches continuing legal education, and he specializes in the area of lawyer ethics. So he knows all about lawyer ethics, and he said that he wanted to do a discussion about the rules about lawyers having sexual relations with their clients. And so that was fun. We talked all about that.
I mean, lawyers are just, is it that lawyers are irresistible, or that they're constantly portrayed on TV and movies basically having sex with somebody every like 15 minutes? Well,
I mean, like we had said on that episode, which is what, episode 10, 11? I don't remember. We're portrayed as these people who are apparently just irresistible because we just can persuade. I mean, it's a joke when we say that, but like, lawyers have been perceived for hundreds of years as people who are, whose influence needs to be reined in because we're so persuasive and we're so powerful, and we can just, so lawyers weren't even allowed to advertise for a long time because it was just like, oh, lawyers, you're going to be talking people into hiring you and exerting this black magic over people that's going to take away their objectivity. And the same thing comes with having sex, although that really goes for, I don't think there's anything unique about lawyers. I think it's anything where there is a professional relationship and a sort of unequal, it's like the lawyer's the professional, the one that the client's going to for advice. And the lawyer does have a lot of power to pressure people. Some people have slept with their lawyers and they say, well, I didn't want them to drop my case. I didn't want, it's like the same thing with sleeping with your boss. It's like, you're afraid of what might happen if you say no. So that's one thing. And, and of course, anything that lawyers are supposed to avoid, anything that can affect their objectivity. You're not supposed to have a financial stake in the case, although we have to make an exception sometimes for contingent fee cases because it's just kind of a necessary evil where people can't get a lawyer otherwise. But normally you're not supposed to have any financial ties with your client. You're definitely not supposed to have like an emotional involvement with them, especially if you didn't know them before. You're not supposed to become emotionally involved. You're not supposed to become sexually involved and that kind of thing. So I don't remember what the question was. It's the line.
Sexy lawyers. I mean, just, try to use the skills. Maybe they don't work over Google Hangouts, so I might be safe.
I don't know. I've been accused of making people turn on their sexy voice when they're on my show.
Oh boy, I don't know if I have that one. We'll try. After having like Bobby on last week, and he's just all super smooth. How you doing? I tried to like impersonate him for about 2 seconds. I'm like, no, I can't do it. It's not there. The voice is what the voice is. So talking about another show you did, what is ACT for America and why should we be afraid of it?
Oh, well, thank you for bringing up these talking points that I didn't even have. So episode 12 was ACT for America, and that came out of it was actually the same day that the God Awful Movies did their live show in New York, on that same day, there were rallies in about 30 cities that were organized by this group called Act for America. And what these rallies were supposed to be, what they were sold as, was people to get together and march against Sharia, which is kind of, I think that was kind of the official title, March Against Sharia. And I mean, in theory, I don't really particularly like Sharia. I don't like any religious rules or religious dogma. But, you know, when you single out Sharia, especially when there's nothing going on in our legal system or political system where we have Sharia coming, it's this group Act for America trying to freak people out, trying to make people think that there are terrorists and extremists coming over, especially embedded in these refugee populations, and that we need to take up our guns. They even said that. They suggested it in one of the videos that I had played on my show by the founder of Act for America, Brigitte Gabrielle, where she was saying, "You refugees, you Muslims coming into the country, you be warned. We value our Second Amendment rights." I mean, that was all she said. It was kind of a Trump-like vagary, but I'd hate to see anything bad happen to you when you come into this country where we have our Second Amendment rights, if you know what I mean. Bada bing. So,
bada bing, 20 minutes in. Oh, okay, sorry.
I live in Jersey. Bada bing. So I've been here 10 years. I'm pretty much assimilated. Yeah, so that group, Act for America, what they really are is a Christian right-wing organization that takes money. They take in a lot of money from donors, claiming that what they're doing with that money is fighting terrorism, and what they really are doing is just putting it into their pocket for the most part. But they also are connected with the Trump administration. So that show was all about making people aware of what was going on with those Sharia marches and what is that group and what they're about. And don't give them money, because they're going on YouTube and they're going on the internet saying, "Give us money to fight terrorism," and then they're just taking huge salaries and also just sitting on a lot of cash. They've got like $2 million in their bank that they're supposed to be fighting terrorism with, but it's just sitting there. So
yeah, it's a tough aspect of the era we're in. We have so much information, but really, if you do want to donate to a cause, you should be able to research it and figure out, they're all making six-figure salaries, and it's really nebulous what they're actually doing. And why are we seeing? I mean, we're seeing this growth in protests, but the right-wing people are bringing like freaking arsenals with them, and usually on the left wing, it's kind of like, "Hey, not do this, please." Which was a little, a little concerning, just a tad. I know it's equally bad because that's what we have to say, but not so much. But you know what's equally good is the fact that you can hold a tune, and you know what? It's time for the first live read. So let's see what we can do with this.
Okay, so I introduced this with a musical bumper. Is that what I do?
Sure, you musical yourself as well.
I do. I'm a singer, although I haven't warmed up, so it's time for a live read.
Perfect. So Secular Saturday. Now, I've been talking about this on the past few shows, but Secular Saturday, if you have heard about ReasonCon and thought, wow, what a great time that was in middle of nowhere, North Carolina, well, why don't you come to an actual city this time? Chattanooga is going to be hosting this. I believe it's July 22nd. Secular Saturday is a day filled with inspirational leaders, powerful talks, panel discussions, and more! It is a one-day convention aimed to gather progressive groups from across the spectrum and help them all work together to achieve common goals. So speakers will include the keynote, Mandisa Thomas, Patrick and Jenica Crail, Patrick Horst, Jen Aldrich, and the podcasting panel, including the hosts of Scenic City Skeptics, No Religion Required, Not Another Atheist Podcast, Atheist in a Trailer Park, and the Podunk Polymath starring Christ Watson. That's Christ. Right, Christ will be there. Actually, it's Chris. I'm such a pedant. I'll be there too. despite what the early versions of the promo said. But that's coming up, and they're trying to get people to go. And I believe No Religion Required is actually giving away tickets. So they've adjusted it. It's $30 in advance, and now you can get ticket for $20 and without lunch, because it has a catered lunch as well. But it's a one-day thing in Chattanooga, and these conferences are tough to put together. So do what you can to help out. And if you can't come to the show, well, or to the event, talk about it, share it online, do all that good stuff. Okay, maybe a little deeper note here, but so in a recent episode, you mentioned a terrorist attack in Somalia and how we kind of all share responsibility for the shitty status of the world. Why do you think people like to shirk responsibility and go all tribal when we have problems that can only be solved with everyone working together?
Well,
that's a lot, I know.
Well, I think people are fundamentally sort of selfish. I mean, it would seem that, people are contradictions, right? Like we like to help others, but we also, I've heard this concept thrown around, and I don't know what scientific research it's from, but we can only care about 100 people or something like that, like really personally care about 100 people in our life. I've heard this. I don't know what study it's from. But
look who my 101st guest is. Well, I do have a few overlaps, so you might still qualify.
So you don't care about me. But
I do. I care for at least the next 35 minutes. Come on.
But I was happy to be 101. That's a great Depeche Mode live album. So
see, we'll take it.
Yeah. So we people don't necessarily work well together. People don't always know how to be a team player. That was something I really had to learn growing up. I definitely did not have that innate. So, can you think of something specifically that maybe I can answer more specifically about?
I don't know. It was something on my head, and the fact that you mentioned it. Jeannie in the chat room mentions the Dunbar effect, which I'm still not sure if that's about the 100 people or what.
It might be.
Well, I think it's the San Bernardino attack happened. And this was the one time that someone did a YouTube kind of attack video. And it was after that happened, everybody, anytime a shooting happens, people seem to get excited when they find out, oh, it's a Muslim, or oh, it's a white guy, oh, we can tally it up to this easily thrown away reason. But I think I just said something to the point that it wasn't the religion that makes people do these things. It's some people just are going to do this stuff and got into just a bunch of trouble. And it was just well, this thing is the fault of this group of people, and I'm not in that group of people. Therefore, I don't have to, it's not my problem. And I always think it's our problem, but that's not even a question. That's just me throwing some stuff out there, and maybe it'll stick. I don't know.
I think it probably is the religion that makes people. It isn't always, but I personally, I know that it's we have this double standard. A lot of people have this double standard where if it's a person of color that did something, they're a terrorist, and if it's a white person that did something like in Charleston, that they're crazy. And I think they're all crazy. I don't make any double standard about it. I think you have to be not right in the head to commit atrocities. And I think that religion is something that's very good at feeding that personality. So especially if you're young, I am, like a lot of women, I am a big investigation discovery addict, although I had to go cold turkey and stop watching it because I downgraded my cable. So I don't have the channel anymore. But, so I would watch a lot of shows, true crime shows, and it would freak me out a little bit because there are stories of teenagers who have murdered their families or whatever. And a lot of the time, especially if it was a girl, it happened because she got involved with a bad boyfriend and turned against her family. And I could honestly, don't tell the FBI, but when I was a teenager, I could see myself having gone down that road if I had the right boyfriend. Like, it just that right kind of perfect storm of things in your head. When you're a teenager, you're apparently, again, your chat room people probably know more about the psychology because I'm a dumbass when it comes to those things. But like, your brain isn't fully developed. You live in this kind of twilight zone of reality, like where you don't quite have a grip on reality. And so I would have, as a teenager, all kinds of weird thoughts in my head, and I sure as hell hated my parents. And had I been involved with the people that could have fed that, and I could see myself maybe having done that as a teenager, having murdered my family or something. So I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I was unattractive enough to not have a boyfriend. But it's the same thing with religion, especially fundamentalist religions. If you have that kind of personality, either because you're young and still developing, or you just are one of those people that's got that kind of brain chemistry, and the religious fanaticism works you up and gets you to want to kill people. That happens a lot. So religion isn't always the motivation for mass shootings or whatever. Sometimes it's, in the case of Charleston, I think it was more about racism. And in the case of those women who were shot in the campus that time, and I can't remember which one, it was more about sexism. It was a guy who was mad at women. But a lot of the time it's about religion. There are a lot of reasons that can drive people to kill people. And religion seems to have more than its fair share, especially if you go back to the Crusades and the Roman times, and there's just so many examples. Holocaust.
The Holocaust.
There's that thing, that Holocaust. Few million.
Few million.
It's a few million between friends, yeah.
It's still amazing that some people say that didn't happen or it was overblown.
Yeah.
It happens once, it feels like it should be. That's over. That's a bad thing. But to take it as, it's like the anti-Sharia people. I feel like the anti-Sharia people kind of want to create their own kind of Christian version of Sharia, which really ultimately isn't that bad. Basically, Islam was kind of cheating off the Christians' test when they were putting that together, and that Muhammad had access to these writings. Of course, I don't think he could read, but you can have someone talk to him. So it's all influenced together, and you can't see like we're all kind of the same, and maybe a little empathy would be nice. We haven't talked about your kind of religious background because you're loud and proud out there as an atheist. What happened there? What happened to you?
What happened?
It's always something negative, right?
I was not somebody who grew up super religious or anything. I was raised Jewish because my mother is Israeli, and my father is the child of very conservative Jews. But he, like when my father was growing up, he had to do, his father made him do all the daily things with the boxes. I think they called it on Cognitive Dissonance, the boxes in the last episode, and all the things you wrap yourself up in and do those prayers every day. And by the time my father had reached adulthood, he was done. He was like, I'm out, I'm not doing this. So he was, I don't know if he's atheist or not. I don't know what's in his head, but he's definitely not religious. He's definitely not into participating with Judaism. My mother is Israeli, but Israel is a weird mix of, they'll call themselves, everybody in Israel calls themselves an Orthodox Jew, but so does Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And, it's bullshit, basically. It's like, they don't, I don't really know what people by and large believe in Israel about God, but my experience with Judaism, and I think it kind of goes across the board, regardless of whether you're Reform or Hasidic or whatever, I think people are not so much into the God thing. And I think that's why maybe you don't see these days, I know that it's very different in the Old Testament, but these days you don't see Jews like committing violence or stuff, because I think Jews honestly don't think, we don't believe in heaven, it's very vague what we do believe. And I'm saying we, but I don't even, I mean, I guess there's no escaping the Jewness. You could take the girl out of the temple, but so I mean, I'm always going to be kind of labeled a Jew no matter what. So I guess I'm going to say we. It's all kind of vague what we believe. Like rabbis will even tell you that they don't necessarily believe in God, or that God is more of a, like, God is more the way that Mayim Bialik describes God, as just sort of a something. And so I think that with Jews, it's so much more about keeping the culture, keeping the traditions. And a lot of Jews are really against intermarriage because they don't want they're always afraid Jews are going to die out. My father's parents were very much like that. They opposed any woman he dated who was not like born Jewish. And they're just like, oh, our people are going to die out if we intermarry and stuff. So they're about the people as a culture, really, and not so much about God and hell and heaven and sinning. So that was kind of what I grew up with. And the question of whether I believed in a God kind of changed. I mean, I kind of tried to figure it out for myself as I grew up. My parents didn't really indoctrinate me with anything. I would go to Sunday school and Hebrew school and stuff and learn kind of the stories. But again, no one took them literally, at least not in my temple. And I even dabbled in a little bit of Christianity because the way that we usually dabble in other religions, we date someone who's into it. So I dated a guy who was really into Christianity, and he was like, oh, you got to get the Bible. You got to read this part about armor of God and this and that. And I did read it. I was like 18, 19. And I was like, yeah, I mean, this is comforting. It's comforting to think about, and you can convince yourself of it. But I mean, I think eventually, just through living life and listening to people like George Carlin and Bill Maher, and listening to people who I think are smart and reasonable, I just came to realize there's just no way there can be any kind of God as is described in the Bible. And I feel like, because we're so small on the scale of the universe, we can't possibly know whatever the truth is. It's going to be nothing like we ever imagined. And I've heard Christians even say the same thing. And I'm like, well, why do you believe in the Bible then? So I've never been a real strong theist. And so for me, atheist is more of a default. And I just really, the more I listen to shows like Scathing Atheists, and the more upset I get over, because I see what religion does to the world. Mother Teresa being a great example, and the Pope. Everyone loves the Pope, but he still tells people not to use condoms. And that's got real consequences in places like Africa. And I think that it's correct that we don't, when you were saying earlier, why don't we work as a team? Why don't we fix problems? I think people feel like in the back of their mind, because they want to feel that way, well, it'll all get sorted out in karma, or it'll all get sorted out in the afterlife, or whatever. There's some sort of cosmic whatever kind of looking out for people, so I don't need to worry about it. And that helps, that's what you need sometimes to sleep at night, because you can spend every minute of every day freaking out about the horrors going on in the world. And so I think people believe in God for the most part just to kind of keep their sanity sometimes, or just because it's terrifying to think that there is no God.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your upbringing. It's interesting, the Jewish faith, just because in terms of like atheists, the amount of time they get on atheist shows, it's only the occasional like, oh, this extreme Orthodox guy didn't want to sit next to a woman or something. And it doesn't pop up as often. And there's this big thing that you still have to consider yourself a Jew, even if you're not religious. And if you read David Silverman's book, Fighting God, he makes a big case about how people who were born, raised Jewish don't have to consider themselves Jewish anymore. But it is like, what would Christianity be like if they never really had that much power? Would they be Judaism? Because Judaism's like, we'll kind of fit in and do our own thing and, try to be a little bit behind the scenes, but we'll be pretty strong. Yeah, the Israel's an interesting experiment. I need to investigate that more because it's like this country that was basically handed over, but people weren't too happy about it. They're still, however many 50, 60 years later, it's forever. It's not a popular part of the world.
Yeah, and I certainly, as when I got into my late teens and stuff, especially when I got into college at San Francisco State, which is very liberal, and I took an international relations class with this professor who is very much more sympathetic to Arabs and Palestinians, and the class was full of students who were that way, and and I would really see their point. Like we would talk about sanctions on Iraq and what it's doing to them, and we would talk about the favoritism that this country gives Israel, and I was like, yeah, I really see a lot of points, and then I would take it home and talk to my mother, and she would freak out at me, because she's from there. So. But yeah, I mean, I think that's right. When you quote David Silverman, I mean, I don't think of myself as Jewish, but the thing is, it gets all mixed up with ethnicity and culture. And apparently, I read something recently that says like people like me are not even necessarily descended genetically from the Hebrews in the desert from the Bible. Like a lot of people in Europe just converted to Judaism, the same way that a lot of people in Europe converted to Christianity. So that's another big thing that I go off on a lot is when people talk about, they mix up their religion with their culture. And it's like, well, if you attack my religion, you're attacking my cultural identity, cultural identity is great, although it doesn't get the protection of the First Amendment. So that's, I think that's one reason why people tend to bind up the culture with the religion, because if you say religion, then you get the protection of the First Amendment.
Yeah, it does try to intertwine itself and give itself credit for things that really didn't do, but it's all there. Oh my gosh, it's time for the second live read.
It's time for the second live read.
Okay, so what I need to do to have the perfect live read setup is to have you do the singing preamble and have Bobby actually say it. If we just have somebody else do all the stuff I do, it might be better. Okay, never mind. So if you ever thought to yourself, why the fuck would I want to go to Carlisle, Pennsylvania? Well, I'll give you a reason. The Inciting Incident Podcast's 100th episode will be there on July 14th. A lot of stuff happening in July. Starring Marissa Alexa McCool, Chris Cluey will be there, scathing atheist, some shady lawyer without a belt called Andrew Torres, and more. Check the show notes for details on that. So when you first got in touch with Andrew, Andrew Torres, opening arguments, and the guy that, they're always referring to in Scathing Atheists, trying to tell Eli not to say certain things about children, what was it like reaching out to a fellow lawyer with the whole podcasting angle there? So he didn't say get out of my territory, right? He didn't pull that, right?
No, it was really fun because I love another lawyer who likes to be in the show business, so to speak. I was very excited. So I tweeted Andrew, like we have become like really good friends because lawyers just like to glom onto each other, to talk shop, and especially, if you can establish business relationships. Like Andrew was like, hey, if you know anyone who, in Maryland who anyone who needs to do the stuff that I do, send them my way. So yeah, so lawyers will do that for each other. They'll refer people to each other. So lawyers like to network in that way. And yeah, I remember like tweeting at him and being like, oh, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. And he's like, oh, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. So, we just chat a lot. And, because I don't know, I have this way of, I'm good at becoming friends with people, I guess, like just because of common interests and stuff. I can't seem to get a husband or anything, but people love, especially married men, they love to be friends with me because I think it's like this no pressure relationship where it's like, I don't know, but I've always been like the one that people want to be friends with. So I'm apparently really good at becoming friends with people who are, you know, have similar interests to me. I have this one friend, Nick, who's a mathematician, and it's like, I don't know, I'm always the Elaine. I'm always the Elaine in the Seinfelds. It's just kind of my thing.
Okay. Now, you get to speak for all lawyers now. Why are lawyers such souses? What's the deal?
I don't understand that word. Is that a Southern word?
Drinkers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I got to the bottom of this. And by the way, Andrew is the only person I've had on my show. Well, actually, wait a second. There's something in common. He was drinking wine when I had him on. He probably had his pinky out and all that. But he's drinking wine as well. I think they're the only 2 wine drinkers I've had on so far. But that's
fucking Harvard.
But what's the deal with lawyers and strong drink?
Yeah, it's alcohol and it's other substances, and lawyers are infamous for drinking a lot and oftentimes to excess. There's something like 1 in 3 is the estimated statistic of lawyers who are alcoholics. And there's always seminars like continuing legal education and everything. And like, you know, do you have a problem with marijuana? Or not marijuana, do you have a problem with cocaine? Do you have a problem with meth? There's a scene in one of my favorite movies, Haiku Tunnel, which is kind of like Office Space, but it's lawyer themed, where they're talking about young litigators on crack. And they cut to a guy who's like, just talk to me all night. Just talk to me all night. So, yeah, lawyers and the drugs. I mean, they do it, I think, like uppers, they do to, I think, stay up and do all the hours that they're supposed to do. And then alcohol is to deal with the stress. There's so much stress. And I knew that lawyers get compared to doctors a lot, but it's really 2 completely different professions. And doctors, you know, especially the ones that do emergency rooms and surgeries and stuff, like they are under so much pressure to save people's lives. And they do serious hours, like especially the younger ones. And so I've heard that they do a lot of drugs too. And with lawyers, it's, you know, there's no comparison. It's apples and oranges. But there's all this fear of screwing up people's lives if you make a mistake in their case. Sometimes people can get even more upset than if they die. If they die, you know, at least they're not going to bother you anymore. But when you've cost them all their money, they're going to be really pissed for a long time, and they're going to have to, you know, there's going to be all kinds of ripple effects of, you know, and so it's always, there's all kinds of things you deal with as a lawyer. There's people coming to you with their problems and like emotionally sucking on you like vampires. And then there's, you know, there's conflicts, and then there's, you know, all the long hours you have to do and all the fear of making mistakes. And sometimes you learn horrible. There's a line from Law and Order, they would think it was McCoy, where he says, every lawyer goes to their grave with the most awful secrets. And so sometimes you have to know things that you wish you didn't know. And all these things can drive a person to use alcohol and other drugs.
So what's your practice, and what's it like to lawyer?
Well, I work for an insurance company, and it's had its ups and downs, but it's been for the most part cool because while I have to accept the downside of being a cog in the corporate machine, I work for a big company and stuff, it's at least I get to avoid a lot of the things that I just cited as reasons, like, because I'm not very good with handling a lot of stress. And I'm the kind of person who will stay up all night worrying about what if this and what if that, and did I make a mistake? Will I make a mistake? What do I have to do? You know, so I do what's called PIP, which stands for Personal Injury Protection. And that is the part of car insurance that exists in a lot of states where your car insurance will pay your medical bills if you have an accident. So I handle disputes usually between doctors and the insurance company over whether to pay this bill or that bill and how much. And it's relatively low stakes. And it's not too much overtime. And I don't have to worry about usually messing up someone's life. So that works for me pretty well. And I also don't have to bill, which is awesome because I used to work for a private firm, and when you represent clients and you bill hourly, you have to spend so much time just writing up what you did and how much time and why they should pay you for this 6 minutes and that 12 minutes. And it's awful. So I love not having to do that. And I love not having to go out and like find clients, because that's always the number one thing of lawyers who have a firm is I need to find clients. I need to, you know, make it rain, as they say. So I don't have to do that. So, you know, it's more of a 9 to 5, and that helps me do my other hobbies like the comedy, the improv, the singing, the podcasting, although it's a maddening schedule. But
it does sound like that. So you were talking about musicals with Marissa on Inciting Incident. So if you could be cast in a musical, do you have one that you would pick?
Now, unfortunately, my favorite musical roles are male roles. And, you know, I these days they're kind of experimenting with switching up the roles, but it's hard with music because when your voice sounds a certain way, it sounds a certain way, you know, and you can't, like, I can't sing a man's voice. So my favorite roles are actually, much as my favorite musical is Les Miserables, and my favorite role is actually Enjolras, because I think he gets all the best. He's not the star of the show, but he gets all the really good emotional moments, and he gets to have this glorious death in the last part, and it's awesome. So if I could play any part, I would play him. And in Miss Saigon, which is also one of my favorites, but it's I can't, excuse me.
More wine will help.
Allergies. I can't go see it because it's just too sad. It was mostly the same people from Les Mis, and they're like, well, this play was tragic, but what if we cranked it up to 11? Like, what if we put in even more suffering, even more tragedy, even sadder ending?
Yeah, and aren't you supposed to have happy endings with musicals? What's the deal there?
Usually, not necessarily opera, but definitely in musical theater, they typically would. And Miss Saigon is based on Madame Butterfly, which has a tragic ending. So sorry. But my favorite role in Miss Saigon is actually the bad guy, Toy. Because again, he gets these really good moments where he's singing really, whatever the word is, he has all this gravitas. And then he gets to have a great death scene. So again, he doesn't have the biggest part. And then he gets to come back as a ghost in the nightmare of the lead character. And it's fucking awesome. So, and those are male roles, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And also, like in, I've been thinking a lot about Sondheim lately because they were discussing it on Thomas's show with them. Was it Thomas's show or was it Embrace the Void? I think it was maybe Embrace the Void, where Thomas went on there and argued about Hamilton with
yeah, the Hamilton dispute that I haven't heard
Aaron yet. So yeah, you know, and it's like irreconcilable because Thomas likes Sondheim, that's his favorite, and if Sondheim is your favorite, then Hamilton is not going to be for you because it's nothing like that kind of music. But like probably my favorite, like in Sweeney Todd, like Sondheim isn't my favorite, but I love listening to Sweeney Todd, like Angela Lansbury, although I could never duplicate her probably, but I love listening to her in that. And then Victor Garber singing Joanna, and I love that. And that would be another one that I couldn't do because I'm not a guy, I'm not a tenor, but it's a great fucking song. So, yeah.
Do you get to see them often since you're fairly close to
musicals,
Broadway and all that?
When I can get a deal and when I have time, I just haven't had time lately. I've gotten some deals with like Today Tix, which is a website or an app or whatever where you can score tickets for relatively cheap, but they're not good seats. But I got one for Fiddler on the Roof when they were having it because I'd never seen it and I wanted to know if I like Fiddler on the Roof or not because I didn't like the movie. So I've always thought I don't like Fiddler on the Roof. You know, and it's a good play. It's not great, but it's good. And it was fun. Although there's like practically no music for the last 25% of the show, which was weird. But I saw On the Town, Bernstein, awesome. He is great. And God, On the Town was like, it made me angry because there were these people who like Tony Yazbek, who's like the reincarnation of Gene Kelly, and he could like sing and dance and act. It's like God, you know, I can't dance. I've always said, well, at least I can sing. But these people could do all of it, and I was like, fuck. So I will never be that good. But the dancing of that show is great. It started out as a ballet, and then it became a musical. But On the Town, yeah. I've seen Jersey Boys twice. I love Jersey Boys.
Yeah, the last time we were in New York, we went to see Waitress because we're big fans. Well, we were big fans of the movie, and then like the soundtrack came out before it, because it was in like previews when we went there. And other than the fact that the seats were more cramped than like you're on a plane, like I really thought I was going to lose a leg.
Oh no.
But it was really good. And then we saw the one that Steve Martin like co-wrote the musimusic for.
Bright Star. What did you think of that? Because my friends told me it was ass.
I don't know. It was like the music was good. The story was, I don't know. It was like kind of written by numbers in a way, and it was. I don't know. It's just fun to be there. I mean, we can see stuff like that. I mean, we actually went. There's a troupe like south of town, and they did Miss Saigon. They actually had like an actual 70s helicopter fly into the field like during I guess the second act, and it actually like started raining during the thing, so it was, you know, very atmospheric. And it's interesting because yeah, they do stuff with actual outside, which is different than, but New York it's fun to see shows. We're there, so next time we're in town, we'll have to
oh my God, yes. Let me know when you're coming. We'll hang. It'll be great. When my mom came, which was some years ago now, I took them to Mamma Mia because I was like, what do you want to see? And they, you know, my mom likes mom stuff. She was like Mamma Mia or Chicago or something. So I got tickets to Mamma Mia, which, you know, was fun. I think I was the only American in the whole theater, like, because my mom and my stepfather aren't from America either. So I didn't hear one person like speaking English or whatever. Like people just wanted, you know, I think that Mamma Mia definitely attracted an international audience because of all the ABBA and yeah, but I enjoyed it. It was good.
So what's the New York / New Jersey comedy scene like, and how do you fit in?
Well, there's different aspects because some people are more stand-up comedians and some people are more improv. Some people do both. Some people are more sketch. That's kind of like the trifecta: improv, sketch, stand-up. Some people do all three. I mostly focus on improv. And so, you know, New York has a great scene for that, which is how I got into improv. I never did it before I got here. In fact, I was here for a while before I even found it. I discovered the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which this very weekend, they're doing the Del Close Marathon, which is a thing where they do 56 straight hours of shows in like 10 different theaters. And I got to meet, you know, I've gotten to meet people that I never thought I would meet. Like yesterday, because I tech the shows during the Del Close Marathon, and I usually do the Saturday night main stage one. So yesterday I was there with like Amy Poehler and Tim Meadows and Horatio Sands and that girl who was in that movie My Girl from the 90s. And it's really fun, you know. So all these people got their, well, not all those actors because that was a special show, but like all those people from Saturday Night Live and everything got their start in improv, and it's just, improv is so much fun. I love it, and to me it's the best. Like, especially bang for your buck. I would rather go to an improv show any day than a Broadway show, because you can get a ticket for $10. And, you know, and it's going to be different every time. And it's just fantastic. Like, it's not for everybody, but like for me, it's like watching magic. So I really love it. And New York has great theaters. There's the Magnet, where that's my second job. I tech there on Saturday night. And then there's the UCB Theater. There's also Chicago City Limits, which is actually a New York place, but they do short form improv, which is like similar to Whose Line Is It Anyway? There's the People's Improv Theater, which I think Eli Bosnick used to perform there, and they do the God Awful movie shows there. And they've got great, it's the Pit, and which is the People's Improv Theater, and the Magnet are more, if you like musical improv, you would go there. They don't have so much of it at UCB. But it's you never run out of things. Like I have to make Sophie's choice between what show I want to go see, because there's always different shows, and never run out of stuff. So that's one of the reasons I love improv.
Yeah, I took a couple improv classes.
Yeah.
And it is really like high ceiling and maybe low floor, but the good thing about it is when it is like short form, it's like, oh, this doesn't work. Okay, a minute later, let's move on to something else. Or you just have to reset your brain and just go and be on kind of on instinct, because that's the thing I do is I'm always like, I got to think about what my next line is going to be. And it's like, you just have to open your mouth and whatever comes out better be good, or better be quick anyway. And yes, and not a bad way to go about some things in life, not all.
Right.
So as a fan of comedians, I want to ask your opinion. So you're a fan of Kathy Griffin. What did you think of her, what is it, stunt, and the reactions and what's happened in the aftermath of that?
She's one of my favorites, and she's still one of my favorites. Honestly, I don't think there was anything wrong with what she did, except for the fact, and it was pointed out, another podcast I like, Reading the Bible with Dan, this guy Dan Weber, who's a comedian, and he was talking about it, and I really agreed with what he said. He's like, number one, she shouldn't have apologized. Number two, why did she do this? How did she not foresee the fallout?
Yeah, pretty much.
If you're gonna, what did you think was gonna happen? So, if you're gonna do it. I don't think it could in any way reasonably be construed as a threat against the president. So I don't think there was anything illegal about doing it. And yeah, maybe it's in bad taste, but it's art. And, some people like some art, some people don't. Did I personally love it? Yeah. It was a little gory, because, it looked very realistic. So, but all these people who watch fucking Game of Thrones, like, if you were freaked out by that, whatever, you hypocrite. But yeah, honestly, I don't think, number one, she should have seen it coming, and I don't know why she acted all surprised when everybody was fucking insane over it. And then, it's like, whatever, it's art, it's her free speech, it's not threatening the president, so she can do it if she wants to. I don't have to like it, you don't have to like it, but it's not a big fucking deal to me.
There must have been a publicist involved or something, but I don't know, it does seem like something happens where a left-winger acts bad, then like the apology happens, but then on the right, it's kind of like, and they can even apologize, but no one says the truth anymore, so it's hard to keep track. Right. But yeah, the constant outrage meter, though. Oh, the left-wing people are so sensitive, and then all of a sudden it goes the other way. It's like, hey, people act like snowflakes all the time. It's not surprising. Like you will overreact to certain things, and it's okay. And for people's like livelihoods to be affected, that's something. But I think Kathy Griffin's probably gonna be okay.
Yeah, and
she won't do the CNN thing, right? But she'll still do.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna. I think anyone who is a fan of her is not gonna stop being a fan of her because of this. And I don't think this is in any way. I don't think I'm a hypocrite for thinking differently about this than, for example, Ted Nugent and because what he did was threatening the president, and it was also racist. And what Kathy Griffin did was not sexist, was not racist, and was not threatening the president. So I think that makes it a whole different category than things like Ted Nugent, where he's like, oh, I'm going to be in prison for murder if Obama gets reelected. Like, that's, I think that's very different.
Yeah, and Ted Nugent's pretty much straight up awful.
Yeah.
It's all, and look at the time, and you're almost out of wine, which is probably a good sign that we've gone.
Yeah, I ran out. Like, I didn't get any, and I thought I had a little more in the bottle. And I like to mix it with seltzer water. And so this is actually probably 2/3 seltzer water right now.
It's sad when you run out. So this will be kind of combined with the tell everybody where to find you. But what do you want your podcast to be when it grows up?
You mean like, do I want to name it something different, or do I want it to have a job?
Yeah, earn a living. Come on.
Yeah, because it's like having a kid, right? You put your time and money into it, and it doesn't even say thank you. So, I mean, I'm hopefully developing my comedy, and I think that I'm hoping that people will like to listen to it the same way that they do shows like Not Just Opening Arguments, because they do the educational stuff much better, and that's not my aim. My aim is to be more funny. So I hope people will like it the same way that they like things like The Daily Show and Colbert. And I mean, I could only hope to be as good as Samantha Bee or, Colbert or John Oliver. I kind of model myself, I think, a little on John Oliver. But again, I could never hope to be as funny. But I hope to get better at least, so that people will maybe think of my show in kind of the same category.
I think that's legitimate. So where do people find Habeas humor? Habeas.
Yes.
Now I always feel like I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Well, yeah, I call it habeas humor because at least in America we say habeas corpus. America. Speak English. But it's Latin. But apparently Benedict from This Week in News was like, it's habeas, because he's English. It's him. You get it bloody wrong. It's habeas. My English accent is fucking awful. I have to work on that. You're getting it bloody wrong. I don't know. He didn't say bloody wrong, but he said it's supposed to be habeas humor, but no. So HABEAS HUMOR. You can sing the Mickey Mouse song, but I'm not going to because they'll sue me. But it is on iTunes, Facebook, Libsyn, and I'll be happy to send you links for your show notes.
Yes.
And yeah, it's the only podcast called Habeas Humor. So if you put it into your podcast searcher, it's on Stitcher, it's on iTunes. It's not on Google Play. I have to figure out how that works. But
I was able to get on there. I need to actually check because I don't even, it's like, oh, there are all these new podcasts. It's kind of like, I think it might have been easier than iTunes, really. It's just you have to submit your feed, and that's all technical, mumble, garble, jarble, whatever. So that's what everybody loves to hear. So if you want to support this show, you can be like Bobby, Hugh, Teody, and Marissa and go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, ZACHRILEGE. It's easy to spell. It's habeas, whatever. Follow me on Twitter, like my Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook. Send all hate mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thanks to Charone for being on today, not tonight. That's different. Stay safe, everybody. If you need the chat, I'm available. If you're an atheist and feel alone, you're not alone. Reach out. Let's chat. Get that human connectiveness that keeps people coming back every Sunday. Stay skeptical. I love all y'all. And good eye.